Hi, everybody. Welcome to La Lista, a LatinX writers podcast. I am your host, Ruben Mendive. And today we have another writer here brought to you by Zoom because of social distancing. I start every interview by asking my guests to introduce themselves. So your name, who you are, and how you identify, and whatever that means to you.
Hello, my name is Kayden Phoenix. I identify as a lesbian Chicana feminist, and I am from Boyle Heights, California. I'm a writer, director, and producer.
And that sort of like leads me into my next question is I ask people where they're from. So where are you from? Where's your family from? And what does that mean to you, you know?
I'm third generation Boyle Heights, California. My family, my grandmas are from Mexico, from Juarez, and from Jalisco, of course. So Chihuahua and Jalisco. And then my grandpa on my father's side is from Puerto Rico. And so I'm Chicana. That's all I know. But my family, I say.
You know, I'm from Chicago, so I'm fairly, new to Southern California. Not really, but like still learning.
Yeah.
So how would you describe Boyle Heights to someone that's never been here? You know, like what's it like? What was it like growing up there?
For me, it was fine. It's all about community. It's all about family. But I grew up very, very sheltered. And as I said, I'm third generation. My grandparents, all of my grandparents, minus the grandfather from Puerto Rico, were raised here. And so they came over like when they were 6, right? Most of them. One was actually born here, my other grandpa. But that's all I know is obviously my family, my immediate family, and a little bit of all my extended family, actually, because both sides of my family are from here. But sheltered because I did not go out. I went out with a lot with my family and whatnot, and obviously my sports and my activities with piano and whatnot. I went out, but I did not necessarily hang out with a lot of friends, which is fine. It was totally, sheltered for very good reasons. And so that's my experience. But when I go to the market nowadays, or even back then, someone in front of you, someone behind you would make a joke. They'd make a one-line joke, and that's what I always remember. And then we'd go about our day, and that's it. And that's every time you go to the market. That's every time you go literally anywhere in Boyle Heights. Even the post office, right? They're very, very friendly. But that's my interpretation of it. As for outsiders, I don't know. I'm not an outsider, so I can't really speak upon their parts. I hear different stories from other people. It also depends on their color and their demographic. And I just agreed with them. I was like, yeah, sure, right? Whatever. I don't necessarily care. If they want to think of us as a negative, sure, then don't come over here. If they want to think of us as positive, great, come over here. But I'm easygoing. I've been within the LA, Hollywood, and just my school out in Loyola Marymount, over in Marina Del Rey. So I'm within the greater LA.
Yeah, and I'm always curious about people that have been here, because I'm an immigrant and my family were immigrants. So what is your sense of Americanness, Mexicanness, when you are third generation, how do you feel like that? What's your relationship with that?
I believe in Latinidad because I am Chicana, right? So I am Mexican American, but I do know I'm connected to my roots. And so my grandma, obviously she's Mexican nationality, but she is I have American culture, I have Mexican culture. I have a little bit of Puerto Rican culture, but really Mexican, and I have American, right? So that's Latinidad. And that is my POV. Do I want a quinceañera? Do I want a sweet 16? My mom gave me the option, right? I got to choose. And I said neither because I'm totally a loner. But at least I got the option of it. And so that's really cool because same thing, I have both cultures. And there is a big American culture. I grew up going to the beach, and that's literally everywhere. But that's what I remember in my childhood, right? Because I was also raised in San Diego. What can we afford? We can afford going to the beach, right? And, yeah, because the beach is free. And so that, and I still love going to the beach regardless, and so I can't speak on the immigrant experience. I do not have it. My grandmas have it. And that is all. I only have one grandma left right now out of all my grandparents. But it's that it's not my experience to speak of. Obviously, I think, the natives, this is native land. That's all I know for sure. But
so I am always curious about people like what did your parents do for a living? like what was it like growing up with, in Boyle Heights?
And so my mom a long time ago was a surgical technician. So she would be in the ER room, and like when I was very, very small, she was. And so like I grew up with her coloring books, or I called them coloring books, but like her books when she studied was this like the nervous system or the digestive system or anything, right? And you'd color them, you'd color the organs and and the nerves and whatever. And so I grew up looking at those, and I thought that was really amazing. But then my mom stopped, and she worked at the Home Depot. She works in gardening because she loves outside. She loves gardening stuff, although she can definitely take blood. My dad, on the other hand, cannot take blood. He can't do horror movies. He can't do any of that stuff. But that's fine. They're just opposites. My dad, his whole life, he worked for General Motors. So I'm very car, because I grew up with a lot of cars. Like I can look at headlights or taillights, and I can tell you what model it is at least. I can't tell you the year because I'm not that good, but I can tell you at least that part. And so that is what they did. We moved around a lot. My parents are divorced, and so in growing up in Boyle Heights, I don't necessarily know because we jumped a lot, but it was good. I mean, all I know is my experience, and I had a very great experience because my family was always with me. So I'm very, very fortunate in that regard, but I didn't know that obviously till you don't realize till after the fact, right? And so that's where I am, and I'm very appreciative of everything that I've had.
Yeah. And, I like to sort of get into like elementary school and just who you were at that age. So who can you describe like you in elementary school, like sort of what your personality was, what your interests were?
Sure. So in elementary school, I went to Euclid Elementary over here on Whittier, so like a few blocks away from my house. I went to school. My grandma was a TA there. And so my grandma would take my brother and I to school. Right after school, we would walk to the YMCA, which is halfway down the block. That's no big deal. But we walked there. I did my homework there. I waited for swim to start, which was like at 5:30 or so, because I was on the swim team for all my elementary. And then I'd wait there. We had a 2-hour swim, like a class or whatnot. And then I'd go home, or I'd shower there. I'd go home, eat, and then do the rest of my homework and go to bed. And then it was on repeat, right? Because that's my daily. And then on weekends, every other weekend was a swim meet. So I woke up at 4:30 in the morning. And then, or my mom would take my brother and I, or me, because my brother eventually quit, to swim for swim competition. And that's it. I mean, it was very, and then I went to different other sports as well. I was always a swim. I had piano I knew piano since I was 4. So I did have, lessons, a lot of lessons. I was in softball a bit, gymnastics, not till middle school, or we're in elementary, but not till middle school I started doing other sports. But swim was definitely my main sport.
And I like to get into high school also. Like, the prompt for high school is always, who were you pretending to be, and how did other people see you?
Oh, that's a good one. I was definitely honors and academia in high school. I got tested and I got into honors. I had a higher math than usual, so I was always with the above classmen in regards to math, but all my classes were honors and then AP starting in junior. My junior year was AP, and then of course senior year. And then I was also in sports still, so I was all 4 years varsity in swimming. I think junior in basketball all 4 years. Well, varsity eventually first, but junior and senior in varsity and basketball, and then volleyball. So I always had to take a sport. So we had 3 seasons there in high school. And then I think I was in orchestra because I didn't want to do band regarding piano. So it was the keyboard at that time. But I would just definitely say people would call me a nerd, and that's fine. I'm totally okay taking the nerd because I graduated number 3 in my class, and I got like a full ride scholarship. And so totally fine. I will take that.
And where did you go to high school? Oh, sorry.
Ontario. Oh, it's okay. Ontario High School. My mom didn't really care for the school system here, LAUSD, in regards to high school, because Roosevelt is on track, and that would be the one that I'd have to go to. And so I went to LACES for a bit, which is LA Center for Enriched Studies, which is it's a long bus ride, but it's a very great school. My best friend went to Bravo, another really amazing school, both magnets. And then we just ended up moving. So we went to Ontario, and then Empire, my brother and I, and my mom.
Yeah. And how would you describe Ontario? Because it's like not super close to Boyle Heights, it's like kind of far away.
It's like 30 minutes east, down the 60 or down the 10. I would call it cow country because back when I went over there, there was like the milk farms we had out there back in Chino, which is the next city over. But it's just, I guess, rural. Or suburban. I don't really know, honestly. I just, it's less populated, that's for sure. It is a good mix, but for me, it was mainly Latino. But there is a good mixed demographic. I went because my mom told me, and that's kind of how it goes back then and still now. And so,
yeah,
that's how I describe it.
And did you have like a sense at that age of like what you wanted to like do for a living, what you wanted to pursue, like any passions that you thought could be like career oriented?
No, none at all, actually. I just kind of just went wherever the wave took me back in pretty much my childhood.
Because it seemed like you were like a good student. So like, was that something that you were aware of, that you were like, you know, in a bunch of activities, like sort of like excelling in high school?
It was it was more of a, you do it because your mom tells you to kind of deal, which is great. I'm very glad she did. And I'm so glad my mom was so hardcore on me. But no, I did it because my mom told me to, because my mom said, you better get straight A's, but you better pay for your own college, etc. And I did. And so it is fine. But no, it was just, it was expected. And so I did as expected.
And where did you end up going to college?
I went to Loyola Marymount University.
And what did you study over there? Like, what was your experience? Because it's also like another different part of LA, So what was your experience going to school there?
It was amazing. It's a really amazing, it's a great school. It's a private school. It's up right by LAX, oddly enough, but it's Marina Del Rey, but right by LAX, next to Otis Design School. And like a little bit up on UCLA, of course. But I enjoyed it a lot. I mean, it was either UCLA or LMU, because I got into both, and those are the only two I applied to. But LMU is a lot smaller, right? Because my dad's thing is like, why do you want to be a number, right? UCLA, you're a number, or any UC school. And so I went to LMU, smaller. It was obviously the full ride on and everything, even dorms and like spending money and whatnot. It was really amazing. And so I appreciated it. I mean, it gave me a worldly kind of view for still being within LA, because everyone else's experiences were so different than mine. And so I appreciate it. And that was the first time I lived not with my family, right? I lived on campus. I got 3 dorms. And so it was a really great experience, honestly. I majored in business administration with emphasis in marketing. I took a lot of film classes. I took a lot of psychology classes. I took theater as much as I can. Not necessarily, not acting, but like theater, like the plays, And so it was great because I got to do anything, because I transferred with AP credits. I transferred with credits over, and it was a full ride, so I could take 6 classes regardless. And so I was like, I might as well learn. And so I literally took all the classes that I can get away with, like the O1s and O2s. So I enjoyed it. It was something that's like, it's a great experience to have.
Yeah. And so like, why did you end up choosing the major you had? Like what was the like, yeah.
Because it was the most versatile, and still at that time I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so everything you do, any career path you go to, any industry you go to, there's a factor of business to it. And so actually it works out well too. Like I'm like, oh, business marketing, which I did because I liked marketing. My dad is in sales, or he worked for General Motors, but he was like a manager of like a division and whatnot. And so he's a very good salesman. My mom is as well, but they do it different ways, which is nice. You get to see their path as to how they get you to do what they want you to do. It's really entertaining for me. But my dad is much better because he's more of a coaxer, right? Like he'll go at a different angle. My mom is more of a, you got to choose, but you will choose the right path. So it's really fun. I tell you, they do it at different ways. And so I enjoy watching them. I enjoy watching people, honestly, but they're really fun. But that is why, because it was versatile. It was just the best out of all, for me personally.
Yeah. And so like, what even compelled you to even take film classes? Like what was the motivation behind that?
I just liked it. I was entertained. So when the first film class I took was, I think, Women Throughout the Decades or something. And so it was a 3-hour class once a week, and every class you saw a movie. And I was like, I could totally do that. And so I learned about film history and like females in history, per se, like film noir in the 40s, right? Just like different ones. And so Why? Because I just enjoyed it. I know everyone like always asks like, how am I connected to film? I'm not. I grew up watching films with my grandparents. Every weekend we went to the movies. Like it did not matter what was out. We just went to the movie theater. And so we saw 3 films, which is also, it did not matter. And so we saw 2 or 3 films every weekend. And like, that was really my film class. That was my first film class. And so that, I guess it was kind of like that in that regard, the nostalgia when I started taking them in class in college. But I enjoy it. Like, you are literally it's escapism. You're going to a whole new world. If they do it well, it's great escapism, and you follow the lead and you go and you hope for them. It's something if it's done well, you follow their path and you hope they get what they want, right? And you hope they get over, they take their arc and they get their goal, whatever it happens to be.
And do you like remember any movies that you went to see with your grandparents? Like just not even like life changing for you, but just like some memorable moments that when you guys did that?
I remember my mom, actually I think because Lion King was out for so long, and that was like my favorite movie back like in 95 or whenever it came out in the 90s, late 90s. I remember Lion King, and I remember Pocahontas came out right afterwards, and I was really bummed about Pocahontas because I thought Lion King was so amazing. My mom likes cartoons, and so I remember she loved Toy Story, and we got everything Toy Story for a very long time. In regards to my grandparents, probably at the house, when we weren't at the theaters watching, I saw a lot of musicals. So like Sound of Music, I know every song from Sound of Music, right? Like, because we saw it so much. That was my grandma loves musicals. And so I remember that, like, that's one of my favorite movies, like, if I obviously have that time, but like, that was a smart movie, right? Like, you put a family, a love story with the war right behind it. So it's really actually very serious if you think about it, right? But it's just like, oh, let's make it soft with kids and with nice little music and puppets, right? Like, it's done so smartly that like it's digestible and it's fun, in that regard. It's very fun. And like, as a kid, you don't get it, but as you get older, you just keep understanding it. It's like The Simpsons, right? Like, as a kid, everything's funny, and then you realize how serious they were and smart, Yeah,
it's funny because, we did that too. My parents were also divorced. So like when we would spend weekends with my mom, we would go to like a video rental place, like down the street. And we would each pick a movie, like me, my brother, and my mom. So we would watch like 3 movies in a weekend, like sometimes twice. Like, it was a weird, like, it's also cheap, but it's fun.
That's good. Yeah, no.
So like, what'd you end up doing after college? Like, did you have a plan? Did it go according to plan?
Oh, I still didn't have a plan then. I went right into marketing because I had that degree, and so that was easy. And so I did like promotional marketing, or however you want to call it, but marketing. And it was so much fun because you give away free product, right? And the people are so happy because you're giving away free product. Like, my favorite was Barbie, right? Because I grew up Barbie. And so like, we literally gave away, or whoever people were like, we gave away Barbies. Like, anything with the little stamp that has Mattel and Barbie on it, like, they ran up and I was done in 5 minutes. Because I was like at a Kmart or something, right? It was just one of those, like, they're so happy and appreciative, and like, they're smiling, and not because I do anything, but I'm giving a free product. And obviously I say the key points and the stuff I had to do, but it's I liked it because I got a lot of people to smile and be happy, at least momentarily. But it was also like non-fulfilling in that regard because it was very, very easy. I can remember key points. I have really good short-term, but my long-term memory is really bad. So like, I can pitch, and I can reiterate any key points left and right. Right, like we did Coke Zero, right? Like, those are the really easy ones to be like, yeah, dun, dun, dun. Here you go. Here's a free can of soda, right? And so that's when I actually started going more towards writing and like leaning towards it. And then I chose, in regards to the format, I chose scripts because I liked film, right? I like features. And so I taught myself how to write a screenplay. I mean, I researched and so I tried my best, of course, and I wrote a screenplay, and it was really bad. And, at that time you think everything's great. You're like, yeah. But same thing, that was my own development and pathway into writing. But I got bored with business, and I just needed a creative outlet.
At what point were you like, this is something I really want to take seriously? Like, I'm going to be like making my own films. Is a career I want to pursue?
Yeah, it kind of fell into that, like, it just kind of tumbles into, you're like, yeah, I want to do this and this, and right? And so eventually, like, I kept writing, and they were all thrillers, and same thing, like, because I enjoy thrillers, I was writing thrillers. And at that time, my writing and my structure was developing, my character development, all that stuff, right? It's just practice, right? A lot of it is just practicing getting junk out of you. And that's fine. Like at that time, I did not know that, but it was just like, okay, let me keep going. Let's keep going. And you keep learning structure. You keep practicing format. Like I had Final Draft. That was fine. So it did it for me, but it's just get it all down. And then I was just like, what do I want to see on screen? And this was a few years ago. And I was like, I want to see Latina superheroes, right? Because this is like when Marvel and DC started really coming out, very long time, a while ago. Mm-hmm. And I was like, Latina, because we don't exist, right? And we don't exist anywhere. But Latina superheroes don't exist. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to write 5 Latina superheroes, because why not? Right? I'm always a big why not person, as was just one. And so I created 5, and I was just like, what's something slightly different, right? I'm not going to necessarily break the mold, right? Like person flying, okay, that's like half of the superheroes already, right? A person with laser eyes, a person that can mutate, right? Like they've all been done, especially mm-hmm. with the X-Men, they've been done like triple times over.
Yeah.
And so I tried my best to do slightly different, right? And obviously make the characters slightly different as well. So they can't necessarily all look the same. It's like putting Wolverine next to Sabretooth, right? Like you can't do that. And so I try to make them completely different. So when they're together in the same team, at least they can bounce off each other and I'll always have conflict. Also, I wanted different ethnicities within the whole Latina world. And so like I have one that's half Puerto Rico, half Cubana, right? And she's in Miami. I have Jalisco, who's the Jalisco, of course. She's LA Mexican. The rest are actually American Latinas. And then my LA girl is Ruca. That's my East LA girl. You know, like they're all over. Bandita's my Dominican in New York. And then my Texan is Santa. So she's El Paso. But I just made up a parallel town called like Wexo. But it's just that like that's what I wanted to see. And so I was just like, okay, and this is how I say I was much more concrete with my structure and what I wanted to do. And then from there, I was like, okay, no one's reading my feature script still. And so I was like, let's do a comic book. And that's only because everybody asked me, where's the comic book? Not because I really wanted to do a comic book originally at the beginning, because I don't do comics. Right, like it falls into each other, and it just keeps tumbling and getting bigger, and it's totally fine. You know, it's better going with it than fighting it. And so I was like, okay, I can do a graphic novel. So I researched comic versus graphic novel. Graphic novel is better in regards to getting the whole story done as opposed to 6 separate little ones. And that's where I am actually. I'm on my 3rd/4th. My Loquita starts, which is my first superhero, starts in June. Santa's wrapping up. Uruca's still going underway. Jalisco's completely done and printed. Yeah. And then I owe Bandita.
And can you tell us about Jalisco? Because it's like you said, it's done. So what was the process of because you had written a script about it? What was the process of being like, okay, how do I make a comic out of it and distribute it?
Research. So Jalisco is about a girl that wants to save her mom. So if you will, it's a reverse Taken. Her mom gets stolen, and Jalisco, that's her last living family member. And she's like, I'm going to find my mom. And so she goes to town, she asks for help, and nobody cares, right? And this is Guadalajara. She lives on the outskirts because she can't afford to live in Guadalajara. And so she goes, she asks, nobody cares. She goes to the cops, nobody cares. Like, nobody absolutely cares. And they all know about the femicide, and she's the only one that does not know about the femicide going on. And so she starts on her way, and she ends up being saved by the Adelitas. And in the story of the Adelitas, besides being the Mexican Revolutionary soldiers, this story that their, I don't want to say that later, but like their mentor, the matriarch, is the last living Adelita. That's Adela, which is actually my grandma's name, but Adela. And then she has a band of girls that she's saved that she also calls Adelita. She trains them to protect themselves and protect others. And so they end up saving Jalisco, and they're like, we'll protect you. And she's like, no, I want to find my mom, right? Like, she's literally just one note, which is fine, because it's very clear. She wants to find her mom. And then so they kind of have to, they don't want to break it to her about the femicide, because she obviously doesn't know. But they tell her about Malinche, who's in charge of the femicide. Malinche, in this one, isn't a native. She just takes that name because she's a traitor to her gender, right? Because she's in charge of the femicide that's going on all throughout Mexico. And she has her henchmen kill females. And so they're saying, well, we think Malinche took your mom. And she's like, fine, I'll go after Malinche. Where is she? Right? And it's literally, they're like, no, we have to train you. And she's like, fine. So she goes into the training process, right? Like, it does follow the beats of a superhero. Yeah. Every superhero's origin story has the same beats. But this one's just a little bit darker, a little bit more on the grounded side. And so she goes through the training, and she, with the help of the Adelitas, they take down Malinche. I'm not going to tell the rest, but that's the gist of that story. It's dark, but it is very sweet at the same time.
Yeah, and I sort of saw like Jalisco, like her like costume and like weapon of choice is like a twist, you know?
Thank you. Yeah, so my mom used to dance folklorico, and so this is the first character I thought of when I was thinking of my five. Because, like, who's your superior growing up? Your mom, right? Or at least for me. And so I was like, what did my mom do? She danced folklorico, because my mom did dance folklorico with a really crazy cool troupe that traveled and everything. And so I was like, okay, my superhero can dance folklorico. What makes her superhero-ish, in quotation marks, because she's still actually not a superhero, technically. She's just a hero. But I was just like, we can put blades at the end of her dress. So when she's dancing, because it's a very pretty dance, she can slice their necks, or she can like whip out her traje, and like the blades shoot out, right? And so it's a little bit, that's on the superhero-y, fantastical part about it. But it's very fun, and visually it's very pretty at the same time, because you do get the dance, but you get the blade, like the killer part about it as well. Yeah. So that is her superpower. Why she got it is that Adela, which is the matriarch and the mentor to Jalisco, she asked her about, she's like, can you dance? She's like, can you fight? Can you do weapons? Like in the training, right? They try her with every little thing, and she fails. She can't shoot a gun. She can't take a punch. She can't literally do anything, but she knows how to dance. And like, that's the one thing her mom could impart to her, was the art of dance. And so, Adela's like, okay, you can dance. We can protect you this way. So that's why they added the blades. Because then she can dance and use the blades as her weapon.
Yeah. And did you ever like dance? Or
No.
Yeah. It's like, it's so interesting to me because I feel like I meet so many people in LA who did do the dancing. Mm-hmm. But in Chicago, this is so new to me. I don't even know if we had it in Chicago, let alone people were doing it like so widespread,
Yeah, it's very, very, I mean, it's Mexican. It's very amazing. Like Emilia Hernandez made it, I believe in the 40s, but she did it. She went to each state, or each region as we call it, and she went to each state, and she made a whole set of dances per each state. So Jalisco has like 5, Oaxaca has, X amount of Chiapas, right? Like they all have their own, and also their own traje. So Veracruz is actually my favorite. This is what I was thinking about, because it's a white dress with a little black apron and a rose on it. And it's very pretty. And like they have like La Bruja, like they have really pretty songs that go with them as well. But my grandma's from Jalisco, and I told you my other grandma's de Juarez, so de Chihuahua. And that's Mujeres de Juarez, right? And like, this one works obviously a lot better because my grandma's de Jalisco, de Guadalajara, right outside of town. Like literally the exact same thing. And the other one's de Juarez. And so that's the Mujeres de Juarez, which is where the femicides, what the femicides are known, where they're known for, is in Juarez, the border. Yeah. So I just always brought it back to my family, since it is based on my mom in that regard.
And I am curious about like your filmmaking too. Just like, how did you like get started? How did you like find like a crew and everything to like start making like films and to like do it like on the reg,
I interviewed a lot of people. At that time I had a co-writer and co-director and co-producer, and so we interviewed crew. We interviewed all females, and then we were saying, this is our plan. We want to get on Crypt TV. We're going to do 1-minute horror shorts to get on Crypt TV, because that's all they take are 1 minute. And it doesn't have to be like scary, or like, it doesn't have to be too much, because they're literally 1 minute, so you can't get too much in within that world anyway. And then we're going to sell it to cribs, and then we're going to do this, and we're going to platform it, like, stepping stones, right? Like everything's just platforming up. And so we interviewed people, and then we chose who we wanted in regards to the DP and who said yes, and we got a skeleton crew. So like roughly 7 or 10 people. And we did a 1 minute short, a horror short, and it was fine. It was a medical one, because I told you my mom used to do medical stuff, so it was very easy. And so that was my own education in regards to being on set. And it went smoothly. Like, same thing, I research, but I do learn very quickly at the same time. So I taught myself I'd be a writer, a director, a producer, first aid. Like you don't have a choice. Nobody got paid. Not the actors, not us. Nobody. Like literally nobody got paid. Crypt TV actually passed on it. So it's that we did 2 or 3, or I think we did 2 horror shorts to start off with. But like that was my film school. Like you learn very quickly how to direct an actor, how to talk to a crew. You learn, right? Because you have no choice. And that is how I started. Was just put yourself, like for swimming, you throw yourself in the water. You have to swim. So that's how I started, and then I just kept going, and then I started getting investments. The first 2 I said were all our money, and so you take a loss, but same thing. That's my film school. That is fine.
Yeah, and if people like wanted to check out your work, is there anywhere that they can see some of these shorts or some of your work?
So I have some commercial specs and my director's reel up on my website. That's phoenixstudios.co. So PhoenixStudios.co. And then you just go hit the director tab and you'll see them there. Otherwise, I have one that just sold to Gunpowder and Sky. So it's on Alter. So it's on YouTube. So if you put Alter, ALTER, and then Penance, that's my queer horror short that did really, really well in the film circuit. That was my last short that I did. And I got into a lot, and it won like Best LGBTQ, Best For, or Grand Jury as they call it. But it did very, very well in the film circuit. And then it just got placed. It was done. But that's Penance on Alter, and that's on YouTube.
Yeah, I think I saw that one. It was in the church, right? With the priest.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Very spooky.
Thank you.
I was like, I don't know what I'm watching, and then I'm like, oh, I'm terrified.
That's the way I do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you just talk about when people go see it, just to talk about like what was the inspiration behind that film and like sort of what it's about?
So I realize I write because based on stuff that would get me mad. Like Jalisco, right? Femicide. So that's what it's about, right? Luca is trafficking. That's what it's about. Loquita is gun control, right? In schools, because she's a young one. She's in high school. So that's what I do. I always do about issues that get me mad. Anyway, so in regards to Penance, I did conversion therapy because conversion therapy gets me mad. And so I was just like, okay, let me do a horror version of it because it's digestible. So in that way, you'll be like, oh, you're not preaching per se, but you're literally just showing me these are the horrors. And then I twisted it, and I was like, what if the LGBTQ kids took their justice? And so that is where we start off. And nobody knows that yet. You don't know that till the end, of course, but at the reveal. But they're walking down on a procession in a church, and the priest is there, and you hear all his words, right? Like his sermon about pretty much the church saying how, they're just saying how you're going against the church for being LGBTQ. Right, but like I take scripture from the Bibles, and like he's saying it, and he's just literally preaching in his own world. And these are all stuff like that I took off the internet. These are actual things that I don't want to say preachers or ministers, but whatever they are, the clergy people that they've said, and I just kind of mashed them all together. None of it is anything that I made up. I was just like, oh, they said this, I can use it. They use this, I can use it. So I just made it a big monologue, but this is the stuff that kids have to hear, or adults as well. This is stuff that we have to hear, as if we're sinning, if you believe in on that. But, and so I was like, great, we'll use it. And that is it. I mean, and then the reveal, which I'm not going to say, but the kids do take their justice out on the priest, and he has to pretty much eat his words. Yeah.
No, it definitely was like intense. I won't spoil it either, but it's like, it's really cool. So, since we are talking about your writing, I'm just curious of sometimes as writers we're telling the same story over and over, just different ways. So I'm just curious, is there like a through line, a theme that you see through most of your writing and the films you make and the things you write?
Before I start writing, I think what do I want to write? I want to write superhero. Okay. I want to write horror. Okay. The next thing I do is I think of theme. So I was like, what do I want to convey? What does the hero or the lead have to learn? That is also so if I can't figure out what my theme is, right? Like never waste your pain, right? Or whatever. They can't kill your spirit, right? Like I'm just thinking of my superheroes. But if you can't figure out your theme, like what do I want to impart to the reader or to the audience, then I can't go forward, because what is the hero's arc, right? And that is all their arcs, and it ends up being like never waste your pain. Like every character in Jalisco has their own past that gives them pain. Right, even Adela, the mentor, they all carry that theme, and they learn it differently because they're all slightly different, but they all have it. And so that is my process, right? Think of genre, like why am I writing it, right? Like if I want to and why. And then think of my theme, right? And then pretty much I just have to do research, right? Like theme and what do I want to say? So like penance was conversion therapy. I had to read and look up and do all the research on conversion therapy, right? Because how am I going to say it otherwise? Same thing, I had to look up mujeres topadas. I had to look up femicide. I had to look up murdered missing indigenous women, right? Because it's my job to. So I research a lot after I figure out what my theme is, what I want to say, and impart to the reader. And then I outline. I'm huge on outlines. If I can't figure out an outline, I shouldn't be writing. And so, because it's true, like the outline tells you what you're writing.
Yeah.
It just makes it completes the circle. And so then if I can do an outline, that means I've researched enough and I understand the world enough. Like obviously they're made up worlds because they're superheroes or whatnot, but it's still like if I don't understand domestic violence, I should not be writing about it. If I can't tell you an example or a PSA that's been done, you know, like if I can't tell you this stuff, then like why am I sitting down trying to explain it to you? Because I can't do it myself. And so that's just my mentality. I always research because it gives you, and I can see the world better. So if I can see the world, I can write it down. If I can write it down, then it'll translate and you can read it or see it.
Yeah. And that something that like was so interesting to me about Jalisco, it was like sort of how you're like creating your own IP to like to base films and other things upon it. So like do you have like a master plan, a vision of how you want this like universe to unfold?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I have 5 origin stories, which are the 5 characters, and then on the 6th one, they get together and they're going to be a team. So like they're in their own universe, and it's called A La Brava. That's the name of the team. I'm not there yet. I haven't written that. That's next month. I start writing A La Brava, and then from there, meanwhile, while I'm doing that, we're doing the graphic novels. So the scripts that I did are being storyboarded, and then the artists are taking it because I can't draw, and they're making it into books. Or I'm along the process, but they're doing the work. They're the creatives then. And then right now, not right now because we're in quarantine, but right now prior, I was doing pitching, to different companies, production companies and platforms. So either as animation actually really likes it, which is very nice. I live in live action, so that's all I know. I'm not anti-animation at all, but it's just pitching and see who wants to take it. So I do want to. It lends to a lot. It lends to live action as a feature. It lends to TV animation either as a feature or as a TV series because they all have their own paths. Like you think of like DC and you think of like Marvel, right? Like DC rules CW. Greg Berlanti rules DC, which is on CW. And you can just list any superhero and it works because you just made them teens. Yeah. Or Gotham on Fox, right? You just have to youngify them. Mine are already young, but like you just have to keep it going and just recycle the characters. Marvel is doing amazing in features. DC's catching up in features, right? But like who had them way back then? DC's always done very good on TV, right? Like think of Batman, right? Like or Superman. Like DC always used to rule. So like they're the ones I look at. It's DC and Marvel, right? Because their properties are dependent on their name, their brand. They made their brand already, and right now I haven't made my brand. I'm establishing my brand. Like you see any movie, it does not matter what it's called. If you call it Guardians of the Galaxy, like a comic no one's heard of, but you have a little Marvel stamp on it and everyone goes, which is true, right? Like that's what majority of people, unless you're like a big time comic person, you don't know what Guardians of the Galaxy was. You don't know, and it's fine. But I need to get up to that level. So features, TV, I like toys, as I've been telling you. I grew up with toys and Barbies. That is for me my like epitome of like I made it was if I get a Barbie of Jalisco. So my friends made me their own little Barbies thus far, but it's coming along. It's a lot of just brand establishment and like audience, and it's going. It's going at a good rate. Very honestly, I released Jalisco September 16th of last year. So it's doing really well. I just got on Amazon. I just got on Barnes & Noble. I just got at Target randomly. I don't know how. Like, it's just a very nice thing. Like, but it has its own progression. Got on Goodreads. Like, I didn't do that stuff. So it's very nice and appreciative. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, no, it speaks to like the quality and the content too of the work.
Thank you.
And, sort of how like we got connected was the Chicana Directors Initiative.
Yep.
So sort of like talk about that for anyone that would be interested in like what it is, how to join, and like sort of like how it came to be.
Absolutely. So Chicana Directors Initiative is a nonprofit that is currently based in LA. It's for Latina directors and Latina DPs. You do not need to be Chicana, you just have to be Latina. You need to have 1 credit on IMDb under director or DP. So those are the rules. As long as you have 1 credit, you're allowed to join. It's free membership. We have like community, we have potlucks, we have producer mixers. We also have like free G&E. We have a lot of, we're a good support network, but we also get sponsored G&E by Cinepower. So it's just little extra things. We have a discount as well as free camera as well from 2 other platforms, 2 other companies. And so the whole thing is to get at a level of work that we can break studio, right? Because everyone can do independent, and that's fine. Independent is great. It's a great learning level. But like to break studio, there's only been like 5 females that have done a $100 million movie, right? How many of them are Latina? 0. And it's just that like we need to start breaking, but we need to have the quality of work up to par at the same time.
In the last couple of years, there's sort of been like a building of like LatinX, young filmmakers, writers, creatives who are sort of just like, I always describe it like everyone's just has had it and felt like the way that things were going and how people were doing things just wasn't working to our advantage at all.
Correct.
So it spawned like a lot of groups, like I started my thing, you did yours, like the Latinx Film Collective. Like there's so many groups out there who are just sort of like finding community and like strength or just like numbers. So I'm just curious of like what was because I totally like believe that there can be 10 more of these groups. We need definitely more. So like what was the process of like being nonprofit, like reaching out to people, like just for anybody that's interested of like how they could do their own thing?
A nonprofit, all I have to do is register online. I think you just have to do articles of incorporation, and then you get an EIN. You do an EIN, I think, on the IRS.gov, and then a California one as well. You just need to do your paperwork. I think it's not too much. I think it's like $81. I'm just talking about California because they all are different per state. It's not hard at all to get nonprofit status. So 501c3 is what we call it. You just have to literally do the paperwork and articles of incorporation and the bylaws. But you can there's templates online that you can borrow from and just edit and make it your own. So that's how you do it. And then, I'm sorry, what was the second question?
Just like, how did you like find these people? How did they find you? Like, what was the building of it,
It's a lot of it is word of mouth. I don't do any marketing or promo for CDI. I have a social media. Instagram's the main one. And then we have a Facebook group if someone wanted a group, like private group. But we post I post on social media at Chicana Directors Initiative, all one word, on social media. And then if anybody writes me or if they write on my website, or it's ChicanaDirectorsInitiative.org, the email's there, and that's how you join. Like, it's literally, how can I join, or how do I join? I was just like, and I just say the same thing. So Latina director or DP, 1 credit, LA based. And then we're also having chapters in El Paso and Albuquerque. Right now we're on pause just because the world's on pause, but it was supposed to launch in summer. So it is expanding, which is very, very nice. And we're working with Fem Fronteras in regards to those 2 locations. But it's, I knew Latina directors and Latina DPs. And so I was just like, hey, do you know what else? And they're like, yeah. Like, we had started, we were super small. We were like 10 people. But like, that was last year. Now we're at 50 something. Same thing. We're still small. Mm-hmm. But it's, small but mighty. Like, we collaborate with each other. We help each other out. We, like, if I can get you free G&A, why wouldn't I? Like, if I can get you a better rate, why wouldn't I? And that's the whole mentality is, it's like, why aren't you turning around and helping your neighbor? Or, it just doesn't, like, doesn't make sense to me. And so we're there more as like a kinship, as well as like, okay, I can strengthen you. I can tell you to do this. How about, why aren't you done with your trailer or your sizzle or your short yet? Because I'm so hardcore anyway. So like, it does not, I hope it helps them. And I think it does. But like, why not? It's always the big question.
Mm-hmm. And have you seen any like response to like, the industry or like larger entities, the powers that be, whatever you want to call it, like from what you're doing?
So NBC Universal asked for the list, as well as Sony Diversity, so Brett King as well. They've asked for the list, so I gave them like our top. So they'll take meetings and they'll meet me and we'll talk and discuss, right? Like they're aware, they're very, very well of our numbers, which is just 0 or 1 out of 1,300 films, and so like, it's just, what are they doing? And it's part of it is, what can they do? So they do help where they can, if they can, of course. But meaning the diversity programs, only has so much amount of power at the same time.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the studios are very open to it. Production companies, I haven't hit them as much as, say, studios. Studios, how I see, are the hierarchy of it all. But it's coming along. Like, who looks at the website? I have no idea, but we get 300 hits a month. And I do no promo. I do literally nothing. Like, it's nice. Whoever is looking at it, because I'm sure it's just not me looking at it, because I don't even look at the website. But it is getting looked at. And, like, if it gets looked at and maybe they take this person for this, and like whether or not it's through CDI directly, because I would never know, it doesn't matter. It's just the point. Here we exist. Here's a whole page of all Latina directors in LA with their websites and their IMDb. So you can see their own credits. Like, I'm not doing anything. It's just, here it is on one page. It's easier for you. Here's a bunch of DPs. One page, same thing, websites, IMDbs. You can do the rest of the work. You can reach out if you want. There's no force or anything. At least it's there and we exist.
I'm curious about like where this like horror / thriller like theme genre sort of like came from, because it seems like it's very much like your sort of thing. So like, where did that come from? Like,
I think it's just inherent in Chicanos that we're just all very dark. I think that's it. I have no idea. I know I told you my mom wasn't too all that. My mom could take blood and gore and all that, and she doesn't cringe at all. She's very, very cool like that. And my dad, like, he couldn't even watch Halloween. He walked out of the Halloween, like the movie theater, right? Like, and that's the difference. But I was obviously raised by my mom, so I'm much more on her side of it. But I don't know. I mean, I think it's just inherent. The more connected you are to death, the more you're connected to life at the same time. And so we celebrate death, right? And so I guess that's it. It doesn't necessarily scare me. Like, I don't like horror, which I think is funny, because that's all people say I do is horror. I do very dark stuff, but I don't necessarily do horror because it does not scare me. So I don't know what that really says about myself, but I'll take it.
Just sort of to start wrapping up, I'm always curious about like the writers that people are inspired by. So this could be heroes of yours, this could be peers, just anyone that like you love the work they're doing. It could also be people you stalk on Instagram that you don't even know, but you're just like always watching what they're doing and you think they're so cool. So yeah, do you have any recs for the people listening?
In regards to comics, Alan Moore, for sure. He's always the number one on every list, right? Particularly because of Watchmen, but like even V for Vendetta or just any of his Batman stuff. Like, it's just Frank Miller at the same time, but that's also Batman's, because I'm in the comic book world. So, like, look up the number ones. For me, it's Watchmen. Alan Moore is great, right? Because he does a new angle. He doesn't necessarily do anything new, but it's at an angle, and so for that reason, it's it's a tangent. I read a lot of Eugene O'Neill, Edward Albee, Luis Valdez when I took the Latin American in theater class. I don't know, I just be open. I like Noelle Stevenson. She wrote Lumberjane. She's doing the DreamWorks she wrote that's on Netflix. She's an amazing writer, really, really good. Oh, Linda Ronstadt. I love Linda. She's a singer, or used to sing. But I read her autobiography. It's the only autobiography I've ever read, and that tells you how much I like her. Because I don't do autobiographies.
Also, where can people find you?
So on Instagram, I have like 50 Instagrams, but the main one is Kayden Phoenix. That's my name. So at Kayden Phoenix, KaydenPhoenix. And then for CDI, which is a nonprofit, it's at Chicana Directors Initiative, all one word. And then Jalisco Superhero on my Instagram as well. So Jalisco Superhero. And that's fine. Everything's on Instagram. So I would just hang out there.
And now this brings me to our final question.
Yes.
I always like to ask the writers to title their episodes. So the prompt is a blank Latinx writer. So in that blank, you can put as many words as you want. You can mix it around, just whatever feels true to like your identity, who you are as a writer, even just from this conversation, like how you, and it's also a great way for people to like see your title and be like, oh, that's like me. Like I should listen to this. I can find someone like me to like.
Can we put lesbian horror superhero?
Yeah.
Okay, that's
that
fine.
works.
Okay.
Yeah, but I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast, for everything you're doing. I'm constantly recommending people to the Chicana Directors Initiative. I think what you're doing is great.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Well, we'll be signing off. I'd like to thank all the listeners. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at La Lista Podcast. And we'll see you next week with a brand new writer. Bye.